Have you ever wondered what truly happens in the mind of someone who claims they don't need anyone, yet suddenly becomes a detective when they discover you're dating someone new? Today, we're diving deep into the mysterious world of how avoidants secretly react when you date someone new, and I assure you, the revelations will be both illuminating and perhaps uncomfortably familiar. You see, the avoidant individual, that person who seemed so indifferent to your feelings, so casual about your connection, so quick to maintain their independence, undergoes a remarkable transformation when they learn you've moved on. It's rather like watching a cat who ignored the toy mouse for months suddenly become intensely interested the moment another cat starts playing with it. But this isn't mere jealousy we're discussing. It's far more complex and psychologically intricate than simple envy. What you'll discover in our exploration today will fundamentally change how you understand avoidant behavior. We'll uncover the psychological mechanisms at work, specifically social comparison bias and reactance theory, that drive these seemingly contradictory responses. You'll learn why someone who pushed you away suddenly seems to care deeply about your whereabouts, why they begin analyzing your new relationship with the intensity of a forensic scientist, and most importantly, how to navigate these turbulent waters with wisdom and grace. This matters because understanding these patterns isn't merely academic curiosity. Whether you're the one who's moved on and wondering why your avoidant ex has suddenly emerged from their emotional bunker, or you're recognizing these patterns in yourself, this knowledge provides the keys to healthier relationships and emotional freedom. The avoidant's secret reactions reveal profound truths about human nature, attachment, and the ways we protect ourselves from vulnerability while simultaneously craving connection. The irony is exquisite, really. The very person who seemed to need no one suddenly develops an acute awareness of your presence in their life precisely when you're no longer available. They become archaeologists of your social media presence, detectives of your daily routines, and philosophers pondering what they may have lost. This transformation isn't conscious manipulation, though it may feel that way to you. It's the unconscious mind grappling with concepts of loss, comparison, and the fundamental human need for significance. What makes this particularly fascinating is how predictable these patterns are once you understand the underlying psychology. The avoidant individual operates from a place of self-protection, having learned early in life that emotional safety comes from maintaining distance and control. But when you date someone new, their carefully constructed emotional fortress experiences what we might call architectural stress. Suddenly, the walls they built to keep others out also reveal how effectively they've kept themselves imprisoned. The story unfolds with deliberate pacing, each word carrying weight. Allow me to share with you the story of Marcus, a brilliant architect in his late 30s, whose relationship patterns revealed the intricate dance of avoidant attachment. Marcus had been seeing Sarah for nearly 2 years, a relationship he would describe as comfortable and uncomplicated. He valued their arrangement precisely because it made no demands on his carefully guarded emotional landscape. Sarah, naturally warm and giving, had gradually begun hoping for deeper commitment, but Marcus consistently deflected such conversations with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. When Sarah finally ended their relationship, citing her need for something more substantial, Marcus felt what he interpreted as relief. He told his friends he was glad to reclaim his freedom, that he'd never intended for things to become so serious anyway. For 3 months he lived contentedly in his restored bachelor existence, traveling for work, pursuing his hobbies, and congratulating himself on avoiding the complications of commitment. Then came the Instagram post that changed everything. Sarah, radiant and genuinely happy, standing beside a man at what appeared to be a gallery opening. The caption was simple: "Perfect evening with this wonderful human." Marcus stared at that photograph for longer than he cared to admit, studying every detail with the intensity he typically reserved for architectural blueprints. Who was this man? How long had they been seeing each other? Was he taller than Marcus, more successful, more emotionally available? What followed was a masterclass in social comparison bias, the psychological tendency to evaluate ourselves in relation to others. Marcus, who had never questioned his own worth during the relationship, suddenly found himself creating elaborate mental spreadsheets comparing his attributes to this stranger's. The man appeared to be a professor, judging by the university event they were attending. Marcus immediately began researching the academic job market, convincing himself that professors were underpaid and probably boring conversationalists. But the comparison didn't stop there. Marcus began what can only be described as archaeological excavation of Sarah's social media presence. He analyzed timestamps to determine when this relationship might have begun. He studied her facial expressions in photographs, looking for signs that she might be settling or pretending to be happy. He found himself driving past her favorite coffee shop, not to see her, but to gather intelligence about her new life. The psychological reactance was equally fascinating to observe. Reactance theory suggests that when people feel their freedom to choose has been threatened or eliminated, they experience a motivational state directed toward restoring that freedom. Marcus had never felt compelled to fight for Sarah while she was available to him, but now that she was genuinely unavailable, every protective instinct awakened. He began remembering their relationship through rose-colored glasses, editing out his own emotional unavailability and focusing instead on their compatibility and shared interests. 3 weeks after that first photograph, Marcus did something unprecedented. He called Sarah, not to reconcile, he told himself, but to check in and ensure she was happy. The conversation was awkward, filled with subtext and careful probing. He asked about her work, her family, and then, with studied casualness, mentioned that she seemed to be enjoying the social scene lately. Sarah, demonstrating remarkable emotional intelligence, simply said she was doing well and hoped he was too. The call lasted exactly 7 minutes and left Marcus more unsettled than before. The most revealing aspect of Marcus's reaction was how it illuminated his own attachment fears. For 2 years, he had maintained emotional distance, not because he didn't care about Sarah, but because caring felt dangerous. Her availability had felt threatening to his autonomy, but her unavailability felt threatening to his significance. The avoidant finds themselves caught in this impossible paradox. Too close feels suffocating, but too distant feels meaningless. Sarah's new relationship triggered what we might call the ghost of Christmas future effect. For the first time, Marcus could see the trajectory of his avoidant patterns. He witnessed his own emotional unavailability reflected back through Sarah's choice to seek connection elsewhere. The man in the photograph represented everything Marcus had been unwilling to be: present, engaged, and emotionally brave enough to be seen with someone he cared about. Transitioning to practical wisdom with the authority of experience. Understanding these patterns provides us with powerful tools for navigating avoidant behavior, whether in ourselves or others. The first principle to grasp is that the avoidant's sudden interest upon your dating someone new is not about love. It's about loss of control. When you were available, you represented a known quantity, a safety net they could access if needed. Your new relationship eliminates that option, triggering their fear of abandonment that lives beneath their fear of intimacy. The practical application of this understanding begins with emotional boundaries. If you're the one who has moved on, recognize that any renewed contact from your avoidant ex is likely driven by reactance rather than genuine romantic awakening. They haven't suddenly realized they can't live without you. They've realized they can no longer take your availability for granted. This distinction is crucial because it prevents you from misinterpreting their attention as evidence of changed feelings or capabilities. When dealing with an avoidant who has suddenly become interested in your life, maintain what I call compassionate detachment. You can acknowledge their humanity and the difficulty of their position without allowing their emotional crisis to derail your progress. Their discomfort with your new relationship is information about their internal state, not a referendum on your choices. Respond to any contact with kindness but firmness, avoiding the temptation to either punish them or rescue them from their discomfort. For those recognizing these avoidant patterns in themselves, the work requires considerable courage and self-compassion. The first step is acknowledging that your sudden interest in your ex's new relationship likely stems from wounded pride and fear rather than rekindled love. This isn't a character flaw, it's a predictable response based on your attachment history, but awareness creates the possibility for different choices. Practice what therapists call radical acceptance of your ex's right to seek happiness elsewhere. When you find yourself engaging in social media surveillance or driving past their usual haunts, pause and ask yourself what you're truly seeking. Are you hoping to find evidence that they're unhappy without you? Are you looking for permission to dismiss their new relationship as rebound or settling? These behaviors serve only to keep you emotionally tethered to a relationship you were unable to fully engage with when it was available. The antidote to social comparison bias requires conscious redirection of mental energy. Instead of analyzing your ex's new partner's qualifications, invest that intellectual energy in understanding your own attachment patterns. What made emotional intimacy feel dangerous in your previous relationship? What would you need to feel safe enough to be fully present with someone? These questions lead toward growth rather than the emotional quicksand of comparison. Developing emotional literacy becomes essential. Avoidants often struggle to identify their feelings until they reach crisis proportions. Begin practicing what psychologists call emotion labeling, simply naming what you're feeling without judgment. I notice I'm feeling jealous. I'm experiencing fear about being alone. I'm feeling regret about my choices in that relationship. This practice builds the neural pathways necessary for emotional awareness and regulation. Consider therapy, particularly approaches that address attachment styles and trauma. Many avoidant patterns developed as protective responses to early emotional injuries. Understanding the origins of these patterns can reduce their power and create space for healthier relating. The goal isn't to eliminate your need for independence, but to distinguish between healthy autonomy and defensive isolation. Create accountability systems that interrupt compulsive behaviors around your ex's social media presence. This might mean blocking their accounts, asking friends to redirect conversations when you begin analyzing their new relationship, or setting specific times to process these feelings with a therapist rather than ruminating constantly. The goal is to create space between impulse and action, allowing for more conscious choices. Most importantly, use this experience as motivation to do different emotional work in future relationships. The pain of watching someone you cared about find happiness elsewhere can serve as a wake-up call about the costs of emotional unavailability. Consider what it would look like to be present and engaged from the beginning of your next relationship, rather than waiting until loss creates urgency. Drawing toward conclusion with profound insight and gentle challenge. The journey through avoidant attachment reactions reveals profound truths about human nature and the courage required for authentic connection. We've explored how the comfortable distance that avoidants maintain suddenly becomes uncomfortable when their former partner moves towards someone new. We've seen how social comparison bias and psychological reactance create a perfect storm of regret, jealousy, and desperate attempts to regain control over situations that were abandoned through emotional unavailability. But perhaps most importantly, we've uncovered the path forward. For those dealing with an avoidant's renewed attention, remember that their sudden interest is about their discomfort with loss of control, not a genuine transformation in their capacity for intimacy. Maintain your boundaries, honor your growth, and resist the temptation to interpret their discomfort as evidence that you should reconsider your choices. You moved on for valid reasons, and someone else's regret doesn't negate those reasons. For those recognizing avoidant patterns in themselves, this moment of discomfort is actually an invitation to growth. The pain of watching someone you cared about find happiness elsewhere can serve as motivation to develop the emotional skills necessary for deeper connection in future relationships. Use this experience as a mirror, reflecting back the costs of emotional unavailability and the benefits of present, engaged relating. The most profound truth emerging from this exploration is that love requires presence, and presence requires courage. The avoidant individual has typically learned that emotional safety comes from distance and control. But witnessing someone they cared about flourish in a new relationship provides undeniable evidence that safety can also come from connection, vulnerability, and mutual emotional investment. Your task moving forward is to carry this understanding into your daily life with both wisdom and compassion. If you've been hurt by avoidant behavior, use this knowledge to protect your energy and make conscious choices about where you invest your emotional resources. If you recognize these patterns in yourself, approach your own healing journey with patience and commitment to growth rather than self-judgment. Remember that attachment styles are learned patterns, which means they can be unlearned and replaced with healthier approaches to connection. The avoidant who suddenly cares when you date someone new is revealing their own capacity for feeling, even if they struggle to access those feelings consistently. This doesn't obligate you to rescue them from their patterns, but it can inform your understanding of human complexity and the ways we all struggle toward connection. Take action on this understanding. Set the boundaries necessary to protect your growth. Seek the support required to heal your own attachment wounds. And most importantly, have the courage to show up differently in your next relationship, whether that means being more present if you tend toward avoidance, or maintaining stronger boundaries if you tend toward anxious attachment. The secret reactions of avoidance when you date someone new ultimately reveal that we all long for significance, connection, and love. The tragedy lies not in having these needs, but in the ways we sometimes make ourselves unavailable to receive what we most desire. Choose differently, choose presence, choose courage, choose connection.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.